Hi and welcome. We are so happy you took the time to join us. Getting your data into one place, using your data to make operating decisions, and optimizing your inputs are the pillars of the FieldView platform.
Andrew and I are excited to be here with you today so we can help you get the most out of your data. Our team is currently on standby to answer your questions live during our chat. So please use the chat feature on the site with any questions you might have. Today, we're going to talk about setting up your virtual farm. We know everyone takes their digital journey at their own pace. Even if you call yourself a seasoned veteran and have mastered the platform in 1 year, or someone that only uses one feature and you're brand spanking new, I know that you'll take something away from our time together.
Customers use FieldView for different reasons. Some like scouting and imagery, others like it for yield analysis, and some like to use platform partners and connect the data for analysis later. No matter what feature you want to use in FieldView, the most important part of setting up and revisiting every season are your field boundaries.
You're right, Andrew. Boundaries are completely underrated. Boundaries are the foundation of the FieldView platform, and they're key to unlocking many insights. You need boundaries to get weather information, satellite imagery, yield analysis. Once you create your boundaries in FieldView, it populates 3 years of historical field health imaging, weather, and allows you to ingest previous year's data. You need to care for your boundaries like you care for your equipment. You take your time to clean your equipment, grease your equipment, fuel up your equipment, and it's the same thing with your digital ag. Let me jump in and show you how easy it is. So now that I'm sharing my screen here, you can see where we got to go, and it's climatefieldview.ca. Making sure that we're going there. Once we click log in, it'll remember my credentials previously from my previous login, and then it'll take me to this page that looks like a giant map of Canada. Then I know I'm in the right spot. On the left-hand side, it'll show all my fields that I have. And here we have a field from 2019 that I know the boundaries are just a little bit off. So I'm going to click on that field. And once I do, there's going to be a little edit button that comes up on the top left part of the screen. And that edit button will allow me to change field boundaries and make it a little bit more accurate. So let's look at these field boundaries. So here we can see on the north quarter that there's an area of the field that we actually harvest and we go through. And this is something that I want to have an accurate acre count. I want to have the best possible field health imaging, and I want to be able to have a better in-cab experience. If I go through an area like this and it isn't mapped, it isn't in my field boundary, then the combine or the seeder could continue to try to kick it out. So we want these to be accurate. So I guess I would just go along, click these buttons.
Hey, Troy, that looks like that might be a little bit tedious. I wonder if you could just go to the More menu and click Simplify and reduce the number of boundary points.
Good point, Andrew. That's why we got you here. That's exactly what we want to do. We can continue just to make these boundaries, tighten them up. And like I said, our field health imaging will start to come in more accurate. If we had areas of our field that had, let's say, a waterway or a slough in it, it would show up as a red area in our field health imaging. Or these treed areas that are down here, if this was included, it would show up super green and rich. And that's not really giving you a good idea of what's going on in your field. So let's make sure that these boundaries are accurate.
And Troy, I've had farmers tell me before, they're getting notified that they might be in a neighboring boundary. And sometimes that's to do with a poor boundary. Sometimes that's due to the settings in Cab app. And so I wonder if now is a great time to be able to transition so that we can get into Cab app and be able to impact our Cab experience the best way possible.
I think that's a great idea. The nice thing about doing all of this stuff now is it's done and it's ready to go when we're in season. Now is the time. It's not something that we want to do in May when we're getting ready to go into the field. I've heard stories of farmers actually driving in their sprayer, trying to set up field boundaries or changing information in their iPad as they're literally driving to the field. That's not the way to do. We don't grease the combine while we're driving, and that's the same way I want to look at FieldView. Let's get this stuff done, and let's dive into the Cab app.
All right, let's go. So now let's dive into Cab app a minute. I'm going to open my Cab app, and I'm going to go into Map. And map is typically the view we want when we're doing field work in the field. And we're going to open up this top arrow here and click map options. And you'll see field boundaries, show or hide. Typically, we'd want that on show. Same with field pins, but you can hide them if you want. Field regions. But one thing I like is this field boundary detection on the right-hand side. And you can have it set as prompt. You can have it set as auto, or you can have it as disabled. And often what I like is I recommend that many of the FieldView users go to prompt, because that way it's not going to just assign you a new field the way it will in auto detection. And so if you end up going over top of a boundary for whatever reason, it's going to say, is this still your field and that you want to be applying to? And so this is a great option to just make sure that we're managing our features in the cab correctly, so that we're making sure that we're mapping in the correct field at the right time. But some customers, they have really tight boundaries and they like that auto detection feature. They got really large fields, and so that works for them. But I generally recommend prompt.
That's really good, Andrew. I agree with you 100%. It's nicer than having it as disabled or auto detect. Auto detect. Sometimes we get into trouble when we go into a neighboring field that's actually our field as well, but it's a different field boundary, and it'll just automatically push it over there. So I think prompt is the best way to go. That's the way that we're having success here as well. I always like to show the field pins. Sometimes you put pins down, you're pinning your rocks, or you're pinning your low spots, or maybe it's areas where there's a hazard. This is an area, if your pins aren't showing up, this is the first place you go to put them in there and to find them. So in that map options.
Great point, Troy. So from here, let's press the home button and let's go into settings. And you'll see general comes up, and this is where our units are. So in some cases, we may want to crop with metric units, but most of the time we might, here in Canada, use English units. We're a bit unique that way, right? And so here's where we can toggle between that. We can also edit yield units. So you can select a crop. And so in this case, let's pick corn, and we've got it in bushels. But if we wanted to change it to pounds or US tons, we could do that here. And so we can select a variety of different crops, say navy beans as an example. Often those are in pounds, but we could still convert it to bushels or US tons here as well. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to do that. Cloud sync, that's bringing our data from what's happening in the cab up to the cloud. So we generally want to have that enabled. And the area where we might want that disabled is if we were concerned about data and we wanted to manage that. But other than that, it's always good to have your cloud sync enabled. So when we get a Wi-Fi connection, we're sending that data back up to the cloud, so it's safe and it comes back into the other apps and web applications appropriately. Other than that, those are the main things you need to know from the general section. So from here, let's take us over to fields and let's build our virtual seed and our virtual chem shed. So the first thing you're going to see on my screen here is that I've got a lot of fields that look like they have a boundary, but I've got one field here that is a perfectly square dotted boundary with a question mark in it. What that means is that I've created add new field here. I've put in the credentials and it's saying, okay, we've created a field, but we don't know where it is. And so it's in these kinds of cases where sometimes we have an operator that ends up getting to a field that's maybe not in their account. They say, how do I map a field on the fly? And it's as simple as going into fields, clicking add new field, putting those credentials in, and then allowing the first equipment pass around those headlands to create that boundary. So a nice, easy way to make a boundary. I recommend that you set up your boundaries if you know where they are prior to getting into the field, but this is a nice one to help cover you in a jiffy. Next, let's choose one of the fields I have, and let's add our hybrid list. So I have a predetermined hybrid list here, but let's say I wanted to add a new hybrid. I could select in DKC for DeKalb in this case, but if it was a different brand, it may very well pick it up as well. And I'm going to go with 3537 as an example, and it's actually helping me spell that specific hybrid. This is important because this helps with data quality when we go to analyze later. So it's often better if it's spoon feeding you a name and that's accurate to actually select that. If not, we can actually go add custom hybrid and it'll take it exactly as we named it. But I'm going to select what it spoon-fed me here today. So let's say we also add another hybrid here. And let's say that one was DKC 4205 as an example. And I'm going to select that one. So I've got two hybrids I'm going to have in my seed shed for this field. So those are now previously assigned, and this allows me to select from a subset list within the CAB app when I go to this specific field. Great feature. Next, I'm going to look at adding applications. So let's say I wanted to apply a herbicide. In this case, maybe I wanted Converge XT, and we'll go done, and I'll go next. It's a liquid. Finish. I'm going to apply this at 10 gallons to the acre. And now I'm going to actually add the Converge product. So I'm calling this my Converge. I can call it whatever I would like. If I wanted to call it pre-emergent herbicide as an example. But now I'm going to add it in. And in this case, it looks like it needs the Converge XT. So it's now picked that up. And I'm actually going to click gallons because we're probably going to want to apply that in milliliters. And let's say that the rate was 250 milliliters per acre. And then let's pull up Roundup. Maybe we wanted to put in some Roundup with it. And there's a whole bunch of different Roundup labels here. And let's look for Weather Max here for a minute. And there's Roundup Weather Max. And let's say that we were going to apply that at 0.67 liters with it. I've got that now done. So now, if your applicator is somebody other than you and you're really meticulous about getting the right products in, you just simplified the applicator's job by pre-selecting these products in the virtual chem shed and even applied them to the right field so that when that operator goes in to the in-cab experience, we can actually just have all of those products listed so that we've made their life that much easier and we're capturing quality data for when we go to review those jobs that were completed later.
You know, Andrew, this is a great checks and balance for a lot of people that aren't running their equipment. I know here in Western Canada, we have growers that'll have two different herbicide systems for their canola. And when you go into the field, if you know what you're spraying, or you know that there's supposed to be Roundup going on that field, or you know it's supposed to be another technology, that alert comes up and it'll tell you. So it's definitely saved our bacon in a few situations where we've entered the field as a sprayer, and they're able to double check and maybe even that triple check to make sure that they've got the right chemistry in the tank.
Yeah, great point, Troy. And we can do this for fertilizer rates. We can do it for seed treatments. Basically, any application you're inputting here, you should really be assigning, and it's really going to bring your data into a real complete set later.
Thanks a lot for that, Andrew. I've got a couple of things that I want to go over as well. In the CAB app, I want to be able to go over how to put equipment in. It's super easy, but I'm going to tell you what, it's not easy when you're driving down the road or you're entering a field to do it. The time to do it is now. It's not going to take us long. I'm going to go into the equipment tab in my CAB app. And at the very bottom, it says add new equipment. And as you can see, I have a laundry list of equipment that's here, but I'm going to add a new piece of equipment. And whether it's a tractor, a planter, an air seeder, a sprayer, or a combine harvester, we've got silagers, pull type spreaders, ammonia and hydrous applicators. You want all of your equipment to be in here. So let's just set up a tractor, for instance. Let's go with, you know, we have the custom option at the bottom as well, but let's just go with the case that's probably, you know, pretty common in my region here. We'll go with a 620 quad track, and these are articulated. And then we would just put in the tractor name, which in this case is the No More Grow More tractor. And here, as you can see, everything is set up, is pre-populated. And a lot of the equipment that we have is going to be in there, is going to be pre-populated. There are going to be some newer pieces of equipment that we haven't quite got enough data sets in where we haven't done this. So for now, if I'm just doing this inside my house or in my office, I would just go with that and I would call it done. But I would go back and check them. It's very important to check these measurements. The more accurate we are here, the more accurate our field boundaries are going to show up. And each pass is going to show up. It's going to help us with our turning and everything. So once that's done, we can add up a new piece of equipment. Let's just go keep it simple with a combine. Let's go with something newer, maybe a new Claas 8000 series. And again, I'm going to call this the No More Combine. And here it's going to ask me to set up a header. The header setup is very important, as well as all of these, all these measurements. And as we can see, the A measurement is from the center of my hub to where that GPS is. The B is how much it is on center, and then the C adjustment is the actual height. So I'm just going to guess that it's a certain height, and then I'm going to go into my heads. And this is where we add a new head. So whether you're using a swather, which some of us might be using, that would be the width of your head. If you're doing straight cut, then that would be the width of your header. So here we have a row crop and a platform. I'm sure that you all would understand that the platform would be something that we would use maybe more in Western Canada for our cereal crops. And then we also have the row crop that's going to be for, you know, for that corn or whatever. But today I'm just going to go with this. I max out the swath sections. The reason that I max out the swath sections is it just allows it to be that much more accurate. Maxed harvest height we can set, and that we need to set when we're inside the combine, or we can just put a max harvest height in the side. Right now I'm just going to disable it. And I'm going to put it at about 65. So that means 65% harvest height. Anytime your header is at that height, then it'll collect data. Anytime it's higher than that, it'll shut off. So when you get to the end of that row and you hit your button to lift it up, that's how we'll use that. So there, I think we're done, and we've got all of our equipment in. There's no offset. And there it is. There's our platform header. So the very important to have all of this stuff set up inside early. And another thing to remember is sometimes we might not be able to get all of the information, and we have equipment limitations, as in some of the pieces of equipment that we use out there today, they maybe aren't able to collect data on. But I tell you what, we've got a solution for that. Our solution is a Map Anything kit. Now these Map Anything kits are very affordable. We can literally put a GPS and a FieldView drive inside that piece of equipment, and we can do anything. We just need to hook it up to a power source. I could hook it up to a golf cart. I could hook it up to, we've even actually hooked it up to summer students. We hooked it up to a wheelbarrow with a 12-volt battery, and they had the GPS receiver walking in front of them, and they were able to map the fields out just by doing that. So it's a great option for a lot of us that are trying to collect that data. So sometimes we might have a piece of equipment that is seeding, and we just have two buttons to flip the seed on and the fertilizer on. Doesn't have a lot of data coming back into there. So what we do is we would just even plug into that GPS system, and we would set the width of our drill or the width of our seeder or our planter, and we would say that it's 50 feet or 65 feet, and that you're seeding variety X at seeding rate Y. So maybe you're seeding a wheat variety, and then you just put in your seeding rate, and then it would map it as it goes. So it allows you that acre count, it gives you that elevation, and then if by chance you want to change your seeding rate, if let's say you want to increase your fertility or seeding rate or seeding depth, you'd be able to map each one of those. So then when you go back and you look in a month or so, or in a couple of weeks during emergence, you can say, why is this difference here in this field? And you'll be able to look back at your data and know that this is where I did a seeding trial. This is where I ran out of fertilizer, or whatever that reason is. And all of that data will be captured in your account. Now that's a second way that's another way to get data into the system. We can also get data into the system with simple thumb drives. We can take a thumb drive that we have, plug it into our monitors of our equipment, and able to download that information and then ingest it into FieldView. Now that's a few more steps that I'm not going to go through today, but it is another option for us. And another way to get information in is an API. So basically, its information is sent up to a cloud, and then the API is a door that opens up and allows the information to be shared back and forth. A great example would be My John Deere operations, information that would go up into their cloud. You'd be able to unlock it using your FieldView credentials and send that into FieldView, having all of your data in your FieldView account and having access to that wherever you go. Now, the last way to get information in, and this is pretty neat and pretty unique to our platform. What you would do is you would go into your cab app, and then in settings, in the settings bar, so once you're in the home menu, the landing page, so once you're on the landing page, you go into settings in the bottom left corner, and then we go into data, and here, and this is a great tip, we'd add field data. So on the right side, we can add field data, and now we want to add activity. Next, and it's going to ask you, what field do you want to add that activity to? I'm going to add that to this demo test plot. And it's going to ask me what piece of equipment I used. And here I'm going to use my 50-foot seeder that I've already put in. And what rate did I seed stuff at? So I'm going to go 5.1 pounds per acre and select the hybrid that I grew. There's the hybrid that I grew, and any seed treatment, I can just go none, or I can add it in. And then here it's going to ask me which day did I seed it in. And I'm going to go that this was seeded, let's say, on May 18th of 2020. But if you're looking at this in June and you're wondering how do I get that information in, put the current year. Obviously, it won't allow me to forward ahead here. And then there, it basically add, and it'll create a map layer for me. The neat thing is we can do something very similar for harvest information too. The harvest information, what you would do is you would go into your add field data, add activity, and what we would want to do on that field, I'm going to find it again, demo test plot, and I'm going to pick this combine that we picked, the No More Grow More combine. And here I have to enter in how many pounds was taken off of that field. So I'm going to have to know my weigh scales. How many pounds actually came off of that field? Just because I don't know and I don't have that information right here, I'm just going to put just under 1 million pounds. Average moisture was 8.5, and the day of this activity, I'm going to go in 21, and I'm going to go October 18th. And then here it's going to ask me for what crop was actually in there. And it's going to ask now it's going to ask me which satellite image do I want to do. And the neat part about it is it takes our scouting images and our satellite images and it correlates yield to those areas. So what we're trying to do in those situations is we're trying to take a field health image that gives us a really good perspective of what went on in that field and where the yield actually lied. And we're able to overlay that with that satellite image and that yield number, and it'll give us a yield map. The neat thing about it is how granular it gets. Our satellite imaging is on a 4 meter by 4 meter square. And you think about that, that's probably more accuracy than a lot of our combines actually give us, as long as you're picking that right satellite image and have those right pounds at the end of the day. So I really encourage you, if you don't have data into the system, and if you don't have a compatible equipment, to use that add activity option in FieldView. I want you to use that add field activity option inside of FieldView in the cab app. Thank you.
Thank you again for taking the time to join us. Next month, we will be going over how to set up trials on the farm. We will be talking with Climate FieldView Field Product Specialist Andrea Karstens, who leads the FieldView trial program for Western Canada, and will share her knowledge on trial setup and execution.
Remember, every pass is a trial, so try something new this growing season. Know more, grow more. See you soon.